Alright, so now that we've learned a few more of the tools that we can use to find derivatives, we're going to be able to get into some of the categories of my favorite types of problems in calculus, which is table problems. Table problems I call gimme points, because really they tell you exactly what you need to know to solve each problem, and you just have to put the pieces together in the right order to be able to make it work. It's really like a puzzle. You'll hear me say that a lot this year, that solving calculus problems is kind of like a puzzle. You just have to put the right pieces into place. So today students will be able to solve derivative problems using a table. We're actually going to use a graph as well. Chain rule will use product rule, quotient rule, substitution, derivative, and composite functions, things that we'll be seeing. So we'll start simple. Let's take a look at what we're given here first. For x values between -4 and +4, we're given function values for x. So like if you were to graph these, the point -4, 3 would be on the graph. The point 0, 4 would be on the graph of f of x. 3, -1, right? And then we're also given the slope at those points, the slope of the tangent lines at each of the points -4 through 4. Same thing for g of x. And then we're given a graph here of h. Looks like it's just 3 line segments stuck together. So we're starting simple here. First, let's find the equation of the tangent line to g of x at x equals 2. So we need a point and a slope. Our point here, well, x is 2, and we're talking about g of x. So if we find 2 and go to g of x, it's -4. So 2, -4 is our point, and our slope, well, we go to g prime of 2, which is 1. G prime of 2 is 1. So our equation, y plus 4 equals 1 times x minus 2. See what I mean? They tell you exactly what you need. You just have to be able to put the pieces into the right place. Now we want the normal line. So we're going to have to do opposite reciprocal of the slope to f of x at x equals -1. So our point here, x equals -1, the f value is 0. So we have -1, 0. And our slope, well, f prime of -1, f prime of -1 is -2. So the slope that we're going to want to use is positive 1/2. So we're going to have y minus 0 equals 1/2 times x plus 1. That's all there is to it. Okay, so starting off simple, let's use some of the derivative rules now. So I'm going to be honest, I did not check any of these before I jumped in, so hopefully we're going to be able to find answers to all these, but if there's something where like there isn't a value or something, I apologize in advance. We'll see what happens. So at any point if you want to try any of these, feel free to pause and then jump back in with me. So we're given r of x is the product of f and g. We want r prime of 1, so that definitely is going to require product rule, right? So let's get r prime of x first. R prime of x is going to be foggy gothy. Right? I even have the right letters, which is great. So it's going to be fg prime plus gf prime, right? And we're going to evaluate that at x equals 1. Remember, this line means we're going to evaluate it at a certain x value. So that's going to be f of 1, g prime of 1, plus g of 1, f prime of 1. How the heck do we get these values? Oh, they're all in the table. AP loves to do this because this really just checks to see if you know the rules. You know how to pick a value and plug it into a function, so just checking to see if you know the rules. So f of 1, let's see, f of 1 is -4. G prime of 1 is 2, plus g of 1 is 1, times f prime of 1 is -2. So it looks like -8 minus 2, that's -10. Right, -8 minus 2, -10, yep. All right, now quotient rule. Oh boy. So let's find q prime of x first. Low d high minus high d low over the square low we go. H of x squared. Notice no derivative on the bottom, just square the bottom function. Now we're going to evaluate that where? It looks like at 1 again. So h of 1, ooh, we've got a graph. H of 1 is 5. So h of 1 is 5. I'm just going to replace all these x's with 1 so we can see that's what we're doing. So 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. And this is q prime of 1 then. And then a 1 here. Just saving some space here. So h of 1 we said is 5 times g prime of 1. G prime of 1 is 2. Minus g of 1. G of 1 is 1. times h prime of 1. H prime of 1 is the slope of this line, right? Because at 1, that's the slope, that's the derivative of h, and that looks like it's also 1. Divided by h of 1, which is 5 squared, 25. So 10 minus 1 is 9/25. There you go. Of course, you can stop here. You cannot stop here. Because we have values to plug in and we know what they are on the table, we've got to go one step further at least. You have to get to numbers. Yeah. H of g of x, that sounds like a chain rule problem. So first let's find p prime of x. P prime of x is going to be h prime at leave g of x alone, and then multiply by the derivative of the baby function, which is g prime of x. So we're going to evaluate that at x equals -3. So h prime of g of 3 times g prime of 3. So that's h prime of, what's g of 3? G of 3 is -4 times g prime of 3. All right, h prime of -4, that looks like -1/2 multiplied by g prime of 3, which is, 0. Wasn't that fun? Okay, so the answer is 0. All right, Mr. Fransky. So it works, but it's not a very exciting number. Okay, but the process that we went through, the derivative at the value, right, and we found that by plugging it into the table. So g of 3 popped out negative. Did I do this right? No, I didn't. G of 3 is -3. Look at that. -3. Doesn't matter though, right? Because that's still -1/2. Look at that. And g prime of 3 is still 0. Okay, so it didn't really change anything. But remember, we're plugging the value in here. We're leaving this function alone. Take the derivative at that value, then multiply by the derivative at the same value. Cool. All right. I don't know if you can hear the rainstorm, but it is thundering like crazy out there. Let's see what happens here. All right. So next up, so sometimes they mix other functions in as well. So here we're still using our same rules, right? So we're given r of x. Let's find r prime of x first. R prime of x. So r prime of x, we got to use product rule. We have two functions multiplied together. So we should use product rule. So this time, instead of writing out Foggy Goffy, I'm just going to do the derivative of one times the other. It doesn't really matter what order you do it. So I usually do the derivative of the first, so it's going to be 2x plus 1 times g of x, leave it alone, plus, this time I'll leave the first function alone, x squared plus x times g prime of x. As long as you take derivative of one and the other, it doesn't matter what order you add them, right? So now we're going to evaluate this at what x value? Looks like 1. So that's going to be 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3 times g of 1. G of 1 is 1 plus x squared plus x is 2 times g prime of 1, which is 2. So it looks like 3 plus 4 is 7. Nice. All right, quotient rule with a root. Oh, fun. So let's do q prime of x, q, not g. Q prime of x. So low d high, root x, h prime of x, minus high d low, h of x. Now, hopefully, you've been dealing with this enough that you now know that the derivative of root x is 1 over 2 root x. Over the square of low we go. Well, the square of the bottom is just x. So if you can't do that 1 over 2 root x that fast, it's okay. Just remember that root x is x to the 1/2. 1/2 comes to the front, so we have 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. Now remember, that's not negative, right? Because we have a positive in the front, and we have an x to the negative 1/2. That just puts it to the bottom of the root, bottom of the fraction. So we're going to evaluate this at x equals 4. So root 4 is 2 times h prime of 4. That looks like it's -2. It's the slope of this line. So -2 minus h of 4, which is 2. Right? I just found that on the value right there. Looks like 2. Times 1 over 2 times root 4, which is 2. So that's 1/4. So times 1/4. All divided by x, which is 4. Now this is one where I would probably stop here, because otherwise I'm going to have to deal with some common denominators. I really don't want to have to do that. So, but if you did, it'd be what? -4 minus 1/2. So 3.5, -4.5 divided by 4. Gosh, -1.125. Something like that. -1 1/8. I think that's what it is. So -9/8. You have to check my math on that one, but I'm going to stop there. Next up, we've got a function squared. Ooh, That's a baby function. This is chain rule. So p prime of x is going to be the 2 comes to the front, leave the inside function alone. So 2g of x to the first power, technically, but we don't have to write that, multiplied by g prime of x, evaluated at x equals -3. So plug -3 in. We have 2 times g of -3, which is 4, times g prime of -3, which is -2. 2 times 4 is 8, times -2, -16. Cool. So our 2 came to the front, multiply by the derivative, plug in -3, g of -3, 4, g prime of -3, -2. Works for me. Alright, now, the next 3 problems are just for funsies. AP probably wouldn't ask questions like this, and I probably wouldn't either. But I just wanted to do some with all 3 functions, because I think it's important to see how this would work. But if you don't want to watch these, not the end of the world. So FGH. Alright, so R prime of x. And I think I'm just going to have room for one of each of these on the next 3 slides. So R prime of x, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about f and g as a single function. So that's a single function multiplied by h. You can do it any order. You could do f times h as a single function, g times h doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do now is basically foggy gothy, but I'm going to consider this as one function. So if I do the derivative of that, that's fg prime plus gf prime times h of x left alone, plus, now I leave the fg part alone, so fg times h prime. I'm going to evaluate that at x equals -4. So f of -4 is 3, times g prime of -4 is -3, plus g of -4, g of -4 is -2, times f prime of -4, which is 1, multiplied by h of -4. h of -4 is 3. Alright, so that part's done. So then plus fgh prime. So f of -4 is 3, g of -4 is -2, and h prime of -4 is the slope here, that's -1/2. So that cancels with the 2, which is nice. 3 times -3 is -9, minus 2 more is -11, times 3 is -33, plus 3, -30. Nice. So you can see, all we did was we blocked these 2 functions together and said, let's consider that one function. Then we take the derivative, we have to use the product rule on that, and then the overall product rule has the h prime over there as well. All right, let's try the next one. We got quotient and product rule going on. Oh boy. So q prime of x, low d high, so that's h of x times, we've got to do foggy gothy on the top, so gf prime plus fg prime, minus high d low, so that's gf times h prime, over the square low we go, h of x squared. Notice the top looks a lot like the product rule we just did. So we're going to evaluate this at x equals 1. So h of 1 is 5, g of 1 is 1, f prime of 1 is -2, f of 1 is -4, g prime of, are we doing 1 or -1? 1. Did I do -1 for some of those? I got to check my work in just a sec. H of 1 is 5, good. G of 1 is indeed 1, and f prime of 1 is indeed -2, and then f of 1 is -4. We're good. Okay, g prime of 1 is 2. Okay, that part's done. Then minus gf h prime. G of 1 is 1, f of 1 is -4, and h prime of 1 is 1. All divided by h of x squared. H of 1 is 5, squared is 25. Alright, so let's simplify that out. Why not? -2 minus 8 is -10, times 5 is -50. Looks like plus 4. So that would be -46 over 25. And that's irreducible because 25 is 5 squared and no 5 is going to 46. Wow. I'm going to check my algebra on that one. I'm confident in this one. That one was pretty quick. I'm not sure if that simplified out right. All right, let's try C. So h of g of f of x. Oh boy, we have a baby inside of a baby function. Whew. Okay, so let's find p prime of x first. So I'm going to do again is I'm going to assume that this is a single function. Okay, so p prime of x is going to be h prime at, leave the inside function alone, g of f of x. Then we have to multiply by the derivative of g of f of x. Well, that's just chain rule again. So that is h prime at g of f of x, left alone, times g prime at f of x, times the derivative of the baby, which is f prime of x. And we're evaluating that at x equals -2. Gosh, these are fun problems. All right, so that's going to be h prime of g of f of -2. F of, well, I can do this at least a little bit step by step. So f of -2, f of -2 is 2. And then we multiply by g prime of f of -2. f of -2 is still 2. And we multiply by f prime of -2, which is -1. All right, so this is h prime of g of 2, so g of 2 is -4, times g prime of 2, we can find that now, g prime of 2 is 1, times -1. H prime of -4 is -1/2, times 1 times -1 is +1/2. That one wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. That nesting of functions can get kind of nasty quickly because you have to keep unwrapping like one more layer every time. But this wasn't too bad. That's all I've got for you. Hopefully you enjoyed these table problems. I really like them a lot. I love you guys. That's why I'm here. Have a great day.